Everyone in New Orleans who is old enough recognizes his name. Al Scramuzza changed the Crescent City's culinary identity forever. But he was more than just the crawfish king. This is the untold story of a man, a legend, who had it all and found his true calling when he lost it all.
Watch a special airing of Al Scramuzza, the Crawfish King, Sunday, May 18th at 7 p.m. or anytime on our YouTube channel, only on WLAE. We're local and educational.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by.
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Dave Miette Insurance Agency. Auto, home, flood, business, 504-556-0809. Dave Miette, INSagency.com.
C&C Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, C&C provides patient-centered care for your entire family. C&C Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we'll cover all the home teams, Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, all on tap. To break it down for us, two of the best we have in the state. Jeff Duncan of the New Orleans Times-Picayune Advocate, also as at NOLA.com, is also a contributor at Fox 8 Sports. And Brett Martel, the Associated Press, join us on our panel today. Guys, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming down. Jeff, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about what's going on over at NOLA.com, if you would. Also let us know a little bit about the recent book as well.
Yeah, the good news on the Steve Gleason memoir, A Life Impossible, is we just came out in the paperback version. So if you hadn't had a chance to get the book in hardcover format, we just released just last week in paperback version, totally different cover. And we got a great shout out from Eddie Vedder at the Pearl Jam show at Jazz Fest, which was really cool. Very grateful for that, and very excited about this next iteration of the book.
Yeah.
Yep.
And of course, NOLA.com, Times-Picayune, and also on a bunch of Fox 8 shows as well, right?
Yeah, we just moved into a new studio over there. It's amazing, the old studio from here.
Our old studio.
And it's spectacular. So all of our content will be up nightly, there. And then Times-Picayune, man, we're hot and heavy going into the summer with all the Saints coverage heading into the training camp.
Brett, the Associated Press, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, first I want to mention that former AP Pro Football writer Barry Wilner, who I believe was on the Hall of Fame committee, he was in town recently and he couldn't stop talking about Jeff's and Steve Gleason's book. He said it was one of the best books he's read in recent years. And Barry himself has published something like 70 books, while he was also our premier NFL writer for decades. So that's a pretty good endorsement too, I think. Maybe not as good as Eddie Vedder, but
right there
good.
though.
Barry's up there.
Barry's up there. Anyway, the AP, of course, is an international news agency based in New York, and I'm down here covering whatever they need from the world of sports. It was golf a few weeks ago. It was the draft overlapping with that. It'll be the Pelicans draft in June, and and obviously Saints off season, and then into the busy time of year when football and basketball overlap.
No doubt. Let's get started. Talk a little bit about. We'll start with the New Orleans Saints and the Derek Carr situation. Of course, everybody by now knows that Derek Carr has retired. Again, degenerative changes in his rotator cuff, a labral tear as well. Keeps $10 million. The Saints are able to claw back $30 million. A lot of people, again, are discussing how that happened. Was this a negotiation? Did the Saints have something? Jeff, I'll take you first. Your thoughts on this situation and how it evolved.
Well, it's definitely a bizarre story, most unusual kind of off-season story I can remember in a long time with the Saints. I think there was a clear disconnect between the team and Carr at some point this offseason. I don't know where it materialized. I think they were on the same page for a long time, and then they weren't on the same page, and I think that's where this originated from. But I do think in the end this turned out very well for the Saints, for sure, because they were on the hook there for a huge cap number. Once they restructured his deal, they kind of tied themselves to him, and this retirement really gave them an out. If they were going to move on from Derek Carr, this saved them a lot of money. I think it was probably a negotiated settlement behind closed doors. I don't know that for sure, but that's what I think happened. And it was very fortuitous for the New Orleans Saints to come to that because, like I said, they were going to have to deal with his cap implications because they've been kicking the can down the road the last 2 years using his contract, the large contract number that was to get cap relief. And in doing that, it really kind of handcuffed them, and those handcuffs are off now.
Brett, what's your take on the situation?
I think that we'll need actually some time, maybe a few years, and some hindsight to be able to really understand it better, namely as it pertains to whether Derek Carr ever tries to come out of retirement and play again. What makes me think he will not is that, in the announcement, they're both on the record saying that doctors found, quote unquote, significant degenerative changes to his rotator cuff. And if you ask any doctor what that means, it means that surgery can't fix that. So they can fix the torn labrum, they can't fix the degenerative changes, and so it's really a matter of how well he can stand to continue throwing that way, kind of like Drew Brees did late in his career. And if you talk to Drew Brees, I remember when he was inducted into the Saints Hall of Fame, we asked him a few questions at the end of his speech, and he asked, his kids were there, and he says, tell them, that we were asking him, do you think you could have come back that year after you retired? You remember they were having problems with injuries?
Yeah.
And he looked at his kids and said, well, tell them how I throw the ball now. And they said left-handed. Essentially, the superior rotator cuff is what allows you to throw overhand like this. He couldn't, I'm left-handed, by the way. he couldn't do it with his right hand anymore after he had, in time after he retired. And that's because of a degenerative condition in his shoulder. So it makes me think that his reasons for retiring are genuine. But then again, we're not inside. We don't know how serious it is. And we also know that with the new regime, the new coaching regime taking over, with Carr having come in under a previous coach, having gone one game above 500, having been beaten up, having been very unpopular among the fan base.
Yes.
I think some segments of the fan base.
Some segments. Some loud segments.
Yeah, I can remember, I'll say this, people were saying, hey, you can't go back to the Dome this year, you can't. I covered those games last year. He wasn't getting booed at home last year. He was, matter of fact, getting cheered when they beat Carolina in the opener. That was 2 years ago when he had the real, the fans came out. I think that's a little overstated. I think you're accurate that some fans didn't like him, but I feel like there's an echo chamber on social media lots of times.
Well, I do remember him getting booed, maybe not last season, but the season before, certainly.
Right.
And every person I would talk to who finds out or knew that I'm a sports writer, I hear a lot of complaints just from the general public about him too, in terms of, and not necessarily in terms of his raw talent, but just in terms of how genuine or not he is, and the issues that he had with like Eric McCoy and other things like that, and performance under pressure.
Performance under pressure. That would be one.
He never really had a signature win, never beat anybody in his career that he probably wasn't supposed to beat.
Right.
Just seemed like there was a lot of empty calories there. His games against Carolinas of the world, he'd have good games, but that's to be expected. And he also had to follow really essence Drew Brees.
Yeah, he did, and it was just a difficult situation, no doubt about it. 14-13 as a Saints quarterback. Walks away again with $205 million in career earnings. Okay, so he made a lot of money as a starting quarterback. But again, the question begs, how do you give back $30 million?
Well, I think that's why I think there's a lot more going on there. As Ross Tucker, said the other day, and I think Ross Tucker, I'll think a lot of him, and he said no one gives back $30 million. And he's right, they don't, in my experience. I think there's a lot more to this story, but I agree with Brett in that we need time to get to shine on this a little more because it's very new. The thing that I keep coming back to is the way both sides acted. If this were just an injury, which happens all the time,
right?
I don't understand why everyone was jumping through hoops to not talk about it.
Agreed.
That makes no sense to me. I know the Saints can be that way, especially about offseason injuries, but not to the starting quarterback, someone that important. It just the actions around it were very peculiar. If it was just a degenerative shoulder injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was perplexing, hard to really understand why. And it wasn't even, it was so far removed from the regular season. It wasn't even a matter of competitive, hiding things for competitive advantage.
Right.
Like, is he going to play on Sunday?
And everybody knew they were going to draft a quarterback. So
he knows that.
Right.
I mean, Derek Carr's not dumb. He's been in the league a long time. And they drafted a quarterback the year before. And he played a lot. And he was a very good teammate to him. So there's a lot of things that didn't add up. But I do think in the long run, this has worked out very well.
Well, $53 million in cap space just for this year. His dead cap now is $13.2 million for this year, which is easily, be able to make for the Saints. $35.6 million next year. But here's the other thing. Now they can continue to have Lattimore and Ramczyk. Lattimore's $31 million and Ramczyk's $23 million as post-June 1st cuts. So that they can amortize that over 2 seasons and not even have to worry about Derek Carr's $35 million until next season. I mean, it was a coup on the part of the organization to be able to make this deal and end up with this type of money and getting them, as you mentioned, a little bit closer out of cap hell. Yeah,
it's probably the best thing that could possibly have happened to get away from the Carr contract. But you don't have Derek Carr here, who's a quality starting quarterback in the NFL. There's so much uncertainty now at quarterback. That's why you see the Saints favored in just one game on this schedule.
I mean, when he was healthy, he was definitely not the best quarterback in the league, but definitely not in the bottom half either. He had a lot of yards. He had 4 Pro Bowls. We did see him make some great throws, like those long third down throws that put away games to Rashid Shaheed down the sidelines. There was at least 2 games where he did that. If he had time and confidence, he could throw a ball as well as anybody. And if he had healthy players around him, that always helped. And oftentimes he didn't, and oftentimes he wasn't healthy himself. So, I mean, there's a lot. It's like anything. I mean, you can't really take a binary look at it. You have to take a kind of nuanced, big picture look. And he had attributes and he had negatives, but he was somehow unpopular, like we said, among a segment of this fan base. And things that make him unpopular are like these little facts, such as he's the first, probably won't be the last, but the first quarterback in NFL history, you mentioned the career earnings, to reach $200 million in career earnings without winning a playoff game. 77-92 overall in his career, 14-13 with the Saints, as you mentioned. Played in only 1 playoff game in his career. It was a loss to the Bengals in the wild card round in 2021. So again, he's among the top 20 highest paid in NFL history. With the $205 million in career earnings. Again, as a record, so again, it's crazy on the amount of money he walked away with, but and kind of being a middle of the road quarterback.
Well, that's the day and age. I mean, the quarterbacks now that their pay is just exploded the last 10 years. It's really over doubled.
Yes.
I mean, I remember when Brees was getting $20 million a year, and we thought that was a huge amount. Now that's half of what these quarterbacks make. So I mean, it's kind of the going rate. I think there's an opportunity though now when the Saints have gone young at that position. There's a window where you have a rookie quarterback and you play on that rookie quarterback deal, especially a second round rookie quarterback. you can really make hay.
Yes.
And they've got an opportunity here to kind of right the ship.
I would agree, especially from a salary cap standpoint, because as you mentioned, you're not paying a quarterback big money right now, so you'll be in that situation. And of course, if you hold on to your draft picks, and if things go the way people believe it may go this season, you're probably going to be in another top 5 or top 10 draft position. So that gives you another opportunity to be able to get younger, get cheaper, and hopefully get better. With that said, what's next at quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, in your opinion?
Well, I definitely think Shuck's going to be the guy. I don't think they would have invested that valuable of a pick in him if they didn't have a very high opinion of him. And I'll be shocked if he's not the starter in week 1.
Says the Louisville graduate.
L's up.
So, I mean, he's got a long way to go, but I think that they're kind of presenting this season, the organization, as a transitional year, and I mean, and they're acting that way too. I mean, when you're trying to win a championship, you might take big swings to get like 2 or 3 like high-profile players that you think can put you over the top.
And they did.
Well, but when you're trying to rebuild, is what I was going to say, is through the draft, they like they did this year. You know, you don't trade away a bunch of draft picks. You keep all your draft picks, because what you're trying to do is get as many guys as you can who can contribute every week on like a rookie scale contract. And the best way to get 5 is to keep all 9. You know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they're not going to hit on all 9, but they gave themselves as many chances as possible to get low-cost contributors that will be the foundation for getting them back somewhere where they can be competitive again in the future, probably not this season.
$53 million to spend, and some holes on the roster. Looking at it right now would be, again, wide receiver, cornerback would be the most glaring. So, some believe they need to go out and get a veteran quarterback to be able to compete. First of all, do you think they'll get a veteran quarterback?
I think that's to be determined. I think they're going to want to look at these young guys, see how they develop, see what they think they have. But there's not a lot out there. Now, the best option might be to wait, get in deep into camp, and see if maybe one becomes available via a trade or a release. But at this juncture, that's what's so bizarre about the Carr situation. Was it was so late in the offseason, everybody had found homes elsewhere.
Right.
I think they probably would have brought in a veteran if this hadn't happened so late in April for it to happen. But I think they want to see what they got first.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I can think of, the only explanation, like you said, for late in the offseason that makes sense is that Carr didn't have the right information before on maybe how hurt his shoulder might have been. And because of other injuries, maybe he had been taking it easy in the offseason, and when he first started to ramp up before OTAs, he just felt that there was something wrong. And it took a long time to diagnose it, especially the degenerative condition more than maybe the labrum tear. And so, I mean, that's the only reasonable explanation, really, but it was still a bizarre circumstance, the way it was handled, everything all the way around. Now, if you look at quarterback, to me, the only thing that makes sense, if you're going to bring in a veteran quarterback, you don't want to spend a lot of money on a guy like that. You want to bring in someone like maybe Teddy Bridgewater or something that he's competent, but he's really there for mentorship. You know, he's not there to win you games. He's there to accelerate the learning process of the younger guys. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see a move like that.
Yeah. On that point, Scott Tolzan, Nussmeier, and of course more all ex-NFL quarterbacks. You guys have been around locker rooms for a long time. Can coaches have the same influence that a backup quarterback that is a veteran on young quarterbacks in the room that maybe coaches had? Because there's always been there's a line of demarcation between player and coach. Can they have the same influence?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But you know, I think it still comes down to somebody's. I just don't think there's anybody out there that's going to come in and move the needle. I agree with Brett. Like, I think at this point, the player they bring in would be more of a mentor, almost coach in the
locker room.
In the locker room, and I feel that way about any of these other positions we're talking about. I mean, people get excited about names. They get excited when they hear Keenan Allen.
Right.
Well, Keenan Allen went to Chicago last year, and they've already moved on.
Right.
You know, how many of these big name guys do we have to bring in? Emmanuel Sanders. You know, I mean, people were excited about Cedric Wilson last year. You know, Brandon Wilson. I mean, it's just, it happens every offseason. And there's a reason at this state of the season, this stage of the year, they're still on the street. And then the flip side of that is, if you're a veteran like Keenan Allen, you're probably chasing a ring.
Exactly.
And you're not getting a ring, I'm sorry, in New Orleans this year.
You're not.
So it's got to be a fit for both sides. I don't think you're going to find somebody beating down the door to come here unless they just have to tremendously overpay for him.
That's what I was going to say. If you, like Asante Samuel Jr. is a guy that played for Staley with the Chargers. And again, maybe he looks around and says, okay, I'd like to get a ring, but if you're going to bring him to New Orleans, you probably have to overpay for him, right?
I would think so. And then if I'm him at this stage of his career, I think I would be looking at a play, I don't know, like Pittsburgh or somewhere where you think you're closer to getting that, because you're probably not going to get the at this stage he's getting, you know, less than prime market value than he was when he was a Pro Bowl level player.
Right.
And so, you know, these guys, the old days when Breeze was here and they were rolling and they were close to winning Super Bowls, they could get those kind of players.
And get them on the cheap sometimes.
And get them off in a discount. So that's not the case anymore.
I would agree. Do you think they'll go out and get a wide receiver cornerback? Do you think that at this point, veterans, or do you think they're going to try to roll with, again, the young team this year and just deal with the growing pains? Brett?
Well, I think at this point there's just no reason to spend a lot of money on any position, on a veteran at any position that you don't envision being there more than 3 years, or at least 3 years, right? Because I think the realistic, now we do see quick turnarounds in the NFL, and the Saints have done it really, I think, twice since you and I have been in the media here. They did it in 2000 under Hazlitt, and in 2006 under Peyton. Very significant turnarounds in 1 year. So, you know, you don't want to entirely rule it out. And actually they did it with Jeff Blake /
Aaron Brooks,
a rookie.
Aaron Brooks, right.
And you know, I mean, the Breeze situation is different because I mean they took a risk because of his shoulder injury at the time, but he obviously was an elite quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, you don't want to sell yourself short in terms of how fast you can turn it around, but realistically, you know, you're looking at like 2 to 3 years to get it really to be a contender again, I think.
Yeah, and I would say the one other factor that I don't think people are considering is the defense is switching to a 3-4 scheme under Staley, and they really have a lot of misfit toys on that defense now because they don't fit. They've run a 4-3 scheme, and I think 3 of their starters are in their mid-30s. You know, great players in this organization: Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, and Ty Matthew, but they're probably on the downside of their career at the end. Traditionally, historically, players like that do not perform better. They perform a little worse, and I think we've been seeing them trend downward. So this defense could actually, I think, be very bad, very bad this year. Yeah. And I don't think people are quite factoring in that, in large part because they're also moving to a new scheme, and players aren't going to fit. It's going to take the coaches a little while to figure it out. And they were 30th in the league last year, you know, and they didn't do a whole lot to that side of the ball other than bring in Justin Reed.
Yeah. The draft, your thoughts? Do you like it?
Yeah, I liked the first round pick a lot. I thought Kelvin Banks was a perfect selection at that point of the draft where they were at. I like the gamble on Tyler Shuck. He may not pan out, like Brett said. No one knows what that transition is going to be like. I think the Saints view him a lot better than a lot of other teams in the league, a lot of fans certainly. But then I think the rest of it, this was not a great draft. I mean, if you talk to NFL analysts, this was a draft maybe to get starter caliber players, but I don't think we're going to see, you know, the 2017, you know, Pro Bowl level players in the second and third round. I think the players beyond that are more depth pieces and guys that'll form the roster core going forward, but might not be, you know, foundational players other than maybe the first 2 picks.
It just seemed like to me a lot of sensible, low risk, hitting for average type of picks. That's what it looked like to me.
Singles and doubles.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, I mean, when you're trying to rebuild the foundation of a competitive sports franchise in a hard salary cap league, you need to get that critical mass of players outperforming the value of their contracts. Right. You know, and that's what, when you have 9 draft picks, you have a chance of getting a handful of those, especially if you're relatively conservative and you're not swinging for the fences on some of these picks. So, and Kellen Moore, I think having coached in Dallas and in Philly, he's seen how teams can have success with really good line play.
Yes.
I mean, I think he really believes in that, so it would make sense that would be his first pick as a coach.
Yeah.
And
do they play him at tackle? Do they play him at left tackle?
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, he could be a guard. He's a rookie, and it might make sense to have the more experienced tackles play tackle and have him play guard. He could eventually play tackle, and maybe. I mean, I think they just got to look at everything. With the line, like they said, they've said all along, get the best 5 linemen they have out on the field.
Yeah, and I think if you think about it from the line's perspective, if you the easiest thing to do is plug him in at left guard, because then you're not moving a bunch of parts around. But it might be the opposite thought process: is there's a whole new staff.
Yeah.
We're just going to put the 5 best guys out there where we think they're best, and not worry about where those guys played in the past. But a lot of teams projected him as a guard. That they felt like that was his best position in the NFL level. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's where he started.
Comes in, and I'm talking about this on the radio show. Comes into the room as the most decorated player, Lombardi winner again, Outland Trophy winner, guy again. At the left tackle position. Fuaga again was a award-winning right tackle. I mean, just to me, it makes sense flipping him back over to right tackle, plug in Banks, and again, figure out the guard position.
Yeah, but I mean, then I guess you're giving up on Trevor Penning then.
Well, unless you move him to guard.
Well, then again,
Right.
you're moving.
Right.
He's already spent a year. You invested him at right tackle. He started to play better there. It's just a matter of do you want to move 3 people?
Right.
And now have 3 people trying to find their way as opposed to just 1.
Guys, I got the list here, and I'll just, if you guys want to just peruse it, how many starters do you think they got out of this draft?
You mean long term or right now?
Well, right now, I think they're going to long term and right now. Let's go long term.
I think they got 2 starting right now. That's going to take some time for the rest of the guys.
Most likely, and the only reason you're counting Shuck among them, right? And the only reason he's starting is almost by default. So
Correct.
they really got 1 start. But it looks to me like all of these guys have a chance to be in the rotation and play, especially if there are injuries. I mean, early on, you got to see how fast they make the transition. But
I mean, I look at it like this. Danny Stutzman's going to be the eventual replacement for Demario Davis. Devin Neal, they hope, will be the eventual replacement for Alvin Kamara. These guys are drafted, for down the road type, development to become the starters, not necessarily step in and be a starter. And that's normal in the NFL, and especially in this draft where it was not highly regarded. Not all drafts are the same.
True.
Not all drafts are the same. So this was not a draft. This was more what Brett said. Get some singles and doubles, and there's nothing wrong with that. The Pete Werner is like a double, I guess. There's nothing wrong with that. He's a starting caliber NFL player. That's not a miss, but no one's building their defense around Pete Werner.
Rookie minicamp was this past weekend. Obviously, look, shorts, T-shirts, helmets, but everybody wants to know what Tyler Shuck looked like. Can you guys give us?
I was not there,
right.
so
I know you were there, Brett.
I was there. I mean, he looks the part in terms of he throws a fantastic ball. He's tall. They ran some plays that looked like, design run. I mean, it's not even two-hand touch out there, but they were going through those looks and schemes and stuff. And so he's like a really great all-around athlete. He's very personable. I think he has a lot of leadership potential. He definitely knew what to say in the interviews. I mean, everything from talking about what he had to eat at Drago's to hitting a pothole with his truck.
Yeah.
He's been coached up well.
Yeah,
very well.
Yeah, but the thing is, he's on the ball. Like he can process that information and say, I should repeat all this stuff when I'm talking to media. It'll endear me with the fan base. And again, he does come in and he's going to be 26. I believe he spent 7 years in college, which I know it's not the same, but it always reminds me of that 80s movie Better Off Dead, where the guy says to Lane Meyer, Lane, I've been in this high school 7 years. I'm no dummy. But why was he in college 7 years? But anyway, no, it's because he had injuries and stuff. But so they hope, they hope that his transition will be shorter than longer because of that too.
You saw him at Louisville. You graduated. You saw Louisville games. What did you think of him?
Yeah, he's definitely the best quarterback they've had since Lamar Jackson. There's no doubt about that. Now, they haven't had a lot since then. But, yeah, I do recall at one point during the year thinking, this guy's a lot better than I thought. And I couldn't understand why he wasn't being talked about more as an NFL draft prospect. Because this is what Brett said. He's 6'5", and he looks the part. And he definitely throws a great ball. So, yeah, I thought this guy's going to at least get a shot to play in the NFL. I mean, I was surprised. And it all developed late. Like, he became the guy everybody started talking about in January, February. But that's also not uncommon. I always try to tell fans, especially that approach about the draft, the NFL teams don't get started on their draft really deep diving until after the Senior Bowl. I mean, when you start reading these mock drafts in December and January, that's just media stuff that people have to fill content. So and we do it too. So it's not a criticism, but people aren't moving up and down boards. The board wasn't even there. There was no board there. The Saints finalized their board like the Monday of the draft. So, that's why I think sometimes people get frustrated and they say, oh, they took this Tyler Shuck guy, I hadn't heard of him. Well, the NFL teams, had done their due diligence. I think he's a guy, though, no one's going to know until they get in the line of fire. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been at Saints practices with Jameis Winston, and you could speak to this. He'll throw the best pass you've ever seen in a practice. I mean, there's a reason he was the number one pick in the draft. There's a lot more to playing an NFL quarterback than just throwing a beautiful ball against air or, against 7-on-7 drills. And so the proof will be in the pudding when he has to get out there in the line of fire.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Brett Martel, the Associated Press, Jeff Duncan of the Times-Picayune, and also Fox 8 Sports are our guests. We come back. We'll continue the conversation about the Saints for a few more minutes. The schedule came out yesterday, so we'll get our guest take on the schedule, how many games they think the Saints will win, how tough the schedule is as well. All that coming up after you hear from our underwriters. I'm Eric Asher. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stay tuned.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Brett Martel, the Associated Press, Jeff Duncan of the Times-Picayune, and Fox 8 are our guests. Guys, schedule came out yesterday. I'm not going to go through the schedule. Everybody can see it. I'm sure we've got it on the screen for you. Initial takeaways.
Well, I think, look, it's a typical fourth-place schedule. I mean, the Saints technically ended up in last because of their tie with Carolina. So it looks on paper user-friendly, but you just never know. I mean, everyone thought the Washington Commanders would be an easy game a year ago going into the season, and we saw how that played out. I do think there's a lot of fourth-place teams that they got because of the schedule formula that are going to be a lot better. I think the 49ers are not your typical fourth-place team. I think a team like the Patriots with a new coach like Vrabel, second-year quarterback like Drake May, they're going to be a lot improved. The Bears will be. So I did think it's going to be a lot more difficult than it looks. And I also think there's some opportunity there. I think the key, though, is going to be, can this team start well and get a little confidence? Because there are some stretches like when they go to Seattle and Buffalo that just on paper look very difficult.
Well, I don't know if it's going to be easy for them to start well. Because like you said, the 49ers are better than a fourth-place team. Arizona was pretty good at times last year. Seattle was pretty good at times last year, and they're playing at Seattle, and then everybody knows about the Buffalo Bills, so they might not even get a win until October.
Right.
But definitely the Giants and Patriots and Bears are all those are the games you look at and think, well, where all these teams are, those might be competitive games.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, as I looked at it last night, again, first thing I thought was, okay, Giants, Patriots, Jets, Titans. Those are games, again, that I think the Saints can win. Now, again, based on what we saw last year, teams are different from year to year, right? And then maybe you split, the NFC South, and that would give you 7 wins. I think that is ambitious because of the team. But again, when you look at the schedule, as you mentioned, not your typical 4th place schedule, because teams that are on this schedule, like a San Francisco, are better than what their record was last year.
I feel like also the South is going to be better. I mean, Atlanta kind of had the Kirk Cousins experiment a year ago,
Yes.
and that was a disaster early on. I think they should be better. If they're not, I think Raheem Morris is going to be in trouble.
There will be a regime change.
Yeah, so I think that's a team that has a lot more talent. I think it's very, though, the perception of the organization outside of New Orleans, I think says a lot about the fact that they have no primetime games. First time since 2000.
Right.
To Brett's point, though, 2000, they ended up winning the division and won the first playoff game in franchise history. So it doesn't necessarily mean that's what you are. You're not defined by the outside perception, but it does tell you a little bit about what the lack of star power this team has.
And they won the first playoff game in franchise history against the Rams, right?
Yeah, defending Super Bowl champions.
Right. So, like, if you had gone into you were covering the Saints in August of 2000, and if someone says to you, well, the Saints are going to win the first ever playoff game, and it's going to be against the Rams,
Right.
you would have been like, idiot.
3-13 the year before.
Yeah. So that's an important thing to keep in mind about the NFL, is that there are always surprises, and it goes both ways. There's probably some teams on here that we think are going to be good, and there's going to be some kind of cascading effect of negative things, whether it's injuries or personality clashes, and they're going to go in the tank. And we have teams on here that we don't think are going to be good, and they're going to exceed expectations and be playing meaningful games in December. So, it's okay to, I think, be optimistic. I think it's okay to have hope about the Saints, but you can't be unrealistically optimistic. You have to understand it's not likely.
Right. I do think that's the beauty of the NFL. The reason the league is so popular, in large part, is because you always feel like you are one season away.
Yeah.
More so than Major League Baseball or the NBA. You can turn things around because we've seen it happen over and over, to Brett's point.
Let me just throw a scenario out there. If they are not overly injury prone as they've been, do you see a scenario where, again, maybe they overachieve based on the roster they have now?
Well, they think so. I mean, I've talked to people in the building that think this roster's a lot better than people outside, but they've also been telling me that for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
So you have to make up your mind. How much were the injuries? How much was just the aging process? Typically, aging players tend to get hurt, as they age. So I don't know. I mean, they just drafted a quarterback that had injury issues in college. So I don't know. I think the jury's out on all this. We don't even know yet. I mean, the coaching staff's completely unproven. There's so many questions, but it also is what I think makes this a very interesting off-season and a very interesting season coming up, because for a while things had kind of gotten into a rut. Let's face it.
Yeah.
The decision to go with Dennis Allen made sense when they did it, to maintain the continuity within the culture. And build that same culture. But I think it clearly had run its course. Now we're going to find out, is Kellen Moore, the next Sean Payton, or is he something in between? But at least it's something new and fresh that kind of gives us some hope, or at least gives the Saints fans some hope.
Same question.
Well, I mean, we at least know that Kellen Moore can coach offense,
right?
But we knew that Dennis Allen could coach defense. That's what I always tell them. And there's just so much that goes into being a head coach in terms of being a CEO and managing the entire roster, managing the staff, managing personalities, understanding what players need to hear on a certain day, being able to do it in a charismatic and sometimes funny way. All right, so here's the thing. I mean, Kellen Moore's kind of an aw shucks guy, personality-wise. He's way closer to Dennis Allen than Sean Payton, but that doesn't mean that stoic coaches can't get it done. I mean, they're not the same person. It's just a matter of how he we just don't know how he's going to be able to recognize on a day-to-day basis, because we're not inside the building, what everybody needs to hear on a certain day and how he manages situations and responds to challenges. And he's a rookie coach. And
also how he does on game day, right, as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think on game day it's going to be similar. Largely, I think he's going to be focused on calling the offense, and it's going to be similar to what he's done before. But you know, he'll definitely have to pay attention to some big decisions in the other two phases.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, I mean, that's what makes this compelling right now. But look, there's a lot of teams that we've seen that have been very, very hopeful when they've had big overhauls, and then it crashed and burned. So we're just going to have to see.
No doubt. So, and guys, we'll talk about before we came on the air again. The training camp is here in New Orleans, so again, the fans are going to be able to see that. They have 2 mini camp practices that'll be open. It's already sold out for the fans to be able to see as well. So at least the team is opening up the opportunity for the fans to be able to see what's going on. So we'll see how it plays out. With that said, let's shift to the other side of the building and the New Orleans Pelicans, who lose the draft lottery the other night with a 12.5% chance at the first overall pick and a 48% chance of a top 4 pick. Pelicans are picking 7th overall. Now, guys, I pulled the last 10 years of 7th round picks. Lauri Markkanen was one. There's quite a few. It's not a death sentence to be the 7th overall pick in the NBA draft, but again, you've got to be shrewd, and you've got to be able to maybe be a little lucky as well. With that said, what do you think the Pels do with the 7th overall pick? Do they keep the pick? Do they move on and try to get a veteran? How do you think Joe Dumars is going to operate here?
Well, I think to be determined. I mean, I think there's a lot of other moves that he's probably evaluating right now and considering. But I would say there's reason to be optimistic, because I think this team largely has drafted well the last few years. That hasn't been their problem. They've actually identified talent. Dyson Daniels, Yves Missi, those were later picks that they hit on. Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, they've identified talent very well, and that staff is still there. So I think there's an opportunity here to get a foundational player going forward. It's not a great draft, but there's certainly enough talent there to where you can get excited about something, providing they get some of these guys back. I mean, there's just so many guys that are injured.
Yes,
you have no idea what their timetable is going to be coming back. So I think a big offseason.
They're saying Murray maybe December.
Right.
We talk about Murphy might be the beginning of the season, maybe November, right? And then, of course, we don't know what the situation of Herb Jones is either, if he'll be ready for the regular season, to your point.
And I also don't think we know exactly what they're going to do with Zion Williamson. Right. I think that's still to be determined. I think it's very much up in the air whether he's back here or not.
What's your gut?
I think they move on from him. I think they because of some of these other circumstances too. But I think Joe Dumars wants to have an evaluation period with him and see if he can get him on board. I do think it's a positive sign that they sent him to the draft.
I agree with that.
I think that's something that didn't happen by accident. And so I do think he wants to see if Zion Williamson wants to be a part of this going forward, and that's what that's what these months are about.
Well, he's the face of the franchise, so you put him out there as the face of the franchise. Now again, can he be the face of the franchise is the big question. I mean, that was what Dumars is trying to push here. What are your thoughts?
Well, they want Zion to mature, and so I think that it's smart for Dumars right away to say, well, if he does have a chance of being the face of the franchise, then let's treat him as such and see how he responds. I also think that there's always this thing where you have a change in management. Joe's coming into a team that everybody agrees Zion Williamson is a generational talent. Now, he didn't help his legacy at the draft because they got the seventh pick. That made him an easy target. Right. But joking aside, I think a new manager want to say, well, not every GM has someone like him on their roster, and maybe the guy before me didn't handle his development the same way I would have, and can I have a chance?
Yeah.
Right?
I would agree.
Maybe I'll do it better. I mean, you don't get those jobs without thinking that you can do it better, right? So I can imagine Dumars wanting to be very, very careful about dealing away, especially if you're not getting the value you think you should be getting back, Zion Williamson too quickly. And he may not deal him until like before the next trade deadline.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because he just kind of wants to get a better sense of what can I do with this guy.
You know, guys, I've been talking about this for a while on the radio show. Again, I think it's time to move on. But again, when you bring in a guy like Joe Dumars, to your point, I think he has to have time to evaluate what he has, and if he can reach Zion Williamson and turn him into the player that we thought he could be. Yeah,
but at some point too, like Zion Williamson has to be accountable for his own actions.
Absolutely, on and off the court.
Yeah, he has to mature. I mean, there's no question. There's been too many off-court incidents. There's been too much ancillary stuff that's stunted his progress and his ability to realize his potential. I mean, no one thought we'd still be sitting here when they drafted him in 2019 without him ever playing in a playoff game. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Here's the thing I think of with AD. Now, AD didn't work out ultimately, but that had a lot to do with LeBron James's meddling and the Lakers and stuff. But I remember interviewing AD early on in his career in the locker room after a game, and he had a Nike t-shirt on, and it said, "Basketball is my girlfriend." That's what the t-shirt said. Yeah. Can anyone imagine Zion Williamson wearing a t-shirt like that right now? Right. Like, basketball is not his girlfriend. But if it were, right, then we would see this kind of supreme professional focus on I have this short window in my life to be an elite professional athlete, and I'm gonna and my entire off the court life is going to be arranged to support my on the court life. Yeah. That hasn't happened with Zion, and so the ownership, I think if you just said, if it was up to ownership, they'd be like, get him out of here, you know? But I think Joe is new, and he wants to come with the fresh eyes and take his time making a decision like that.
But the big elephant in the room is, with all of that, maturity, attention to detail, can he stay healthy? And that's been the big question. Again, he's in better shape, but even in a good shape, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Some believe his body type, that again, he will not be able to stay healthy in his career. That's one of the keys going forward on Zion Williamson. You know, again, if you're going to have a face of the franchise, that face of the franchise has to be able to be healthy and lead your team. He hasn't been.
Yeah, and, you know, they've turned over the medical staff, you know, the training staff a few times. They built a lot of this around Zion. There's been so much investment in making this thing work with him. And if you talk to Zion, there are a lot of times where he feels like he could play more, that he's having to adhere to the, you know, the restrictions of the organization.
Well, was that Griffin's restrictions?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know who's. I'm just saying, like, they're adhering to the medical team.
Yes.
So they're following their guidelines. Will Joe Dumars feel that same way? I don't know. We've got new direction here.
Yeah, I think that it wasn't specifically Griffin, but it was indirectly Griffin in that, you know, he put that medical team together. He believed in that team, and he thought he wanted to take a very kind of modern, progressive, analytic approach to managing a unique body type like Zion, who has turned out to be maybe prone to injury. I mean, he seems obviously prone to injury, but maybe, you know, everybody's different, and sometimes you can overthink it. And I know that, you know, when he was at Duke, they just said, the way he gets in shape is to play, and you just got to plan. And maybe if they had tried that, you know, which seems like an very old school, not modern, not progressive way of thinking, maybe it would have worked with him. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
Van Gundy said the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. He was old school as well. I mean, at some point, though, I mean, the glaring statistic right now in his tenure is he's played in less games than he's missed. And, I mean, that's the number one pick in the draft. I can't think of anybody else close to that in the last few years.
No, he's missed hundreds of games.
Yes.
I keep having to go back and add it up. I can't even remember the number. It's too big.
I have it somewhere here. I mean, but
it's almost like a Greg Oden situation.
Yeah, it really feels like it. It really does. It absolutely does. Okay. We see the roster as it is today. One thing that really stuck out to me when Dumars took over was his opening comments. And I have them, and I'm keeping them, and I'm holding on to them through his tenure. He wants to shape the team into his vision of the Pelicans. Disciplined, tough-minded, accountability while setting an unwavering standards for the organization. Do they have those type of players on this roster right now?
I think, you know, some certainly. I think what they're saying there, reading between the lines, is they kind of want to build this team in New Orleans image, and they think that'll help sell to the fan base. You know, the resiliency, the toughness.
Sounds a lot like Detroit.
Yeah, yeah. You build it within the city's image. I think they have some of that for sure, but I think they lost some of that too. And going into last season, when I understood what they did last year, and moving off Najee Marshall and Jonas, but they lost some dogs there. Those guys were popular in the locker room, so they lost a little bit. But they were also trying to make that push with DeJounte Murray, finish games better. Now, what we haven't talked about here is Willie Green. I think he's, at this point, I think it's probably safe to say he's going to be the coach.
For at least a year, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I think they would have done something by now.
Agreed. And is that ownership, in your opinion, or is that
ownership?
Ownership dictating, look, we want you to keep Willie Green, or is that Joe Dumars saying, I've known Willie Green since he was in high school, I think I can work with him?
I think it's more the latter. I don't think they would dictate to him to keep the coach. I think that's overplayed sometimes. Now, I think Joe Dumars wants to see progress and wants to evaluate him. But they also owe him for another year, so that's definitely a factor.
And Green is popular with ownership. I mean, he's a really affable guy. It's hard to know if all the players feel the same way about him as management does, or as a lot of fans do, or people that know him just socially. But he's very likable. He does have a year left in his contract. My suspicion is that the ownership of the Pelicans made it known to Dumars, you can do what you want, but we like him, and he has another year under contract. So at least but don't do it hastily. We're not, there would be times when ownership would bring in a new GM and say, wipe the slate clean, start over, fire everybody. But I believe they did not say that to him, and he likes Willie, right? Like Jeff said, probably more the latter. He's known Willie a long time, likes Willie, and so if ownership likes him, I like him, I'm not moving on from him yet. He's got another year on contract. Let's see how he does.
Yeah, I think the only reason you do that is if you had somebody in mind that you wanted to target and get in here, and I don't think that's the case.
Well, he's brought in two guys, again, that he worked with in Detroit, so again, obviously, he feels comfortable with that in his front office. They kept, as you mentioned, a lot of front office from the previous regime, so we'll see how that meshes. We do want to get through baseball and just kind of let everybody know what's going on in the baseball. Loyola is taking on Ave Maria today as we are taping this program. If they win, again, they go to the NAIA College World Series. If they lose, again, they're out. Suno, with only 2 years, again, with their program, their baseball program, we're 2 in barbecue in the regional, but it was a great feat for that program with only 2 years in its infancy to be able to get to the NAIA tournament as well. UNO and SLU will play today, and that is this evening. SLU is the number 1 seed in the Southland. UNO is the 8th seed. Number 1 ranked LSU, 40-12, 17-10 is at South Carolina this weekend for their final SEC series. Most people believe they've all but locked up a top 8 seed, which would give them an opportunity to be able to host a regional and a super regional if they win that regional in Baton Rouge, which is usually a pathway to Omaha. Tulane has to win their conference in order to get back to a regional, as they've done the last 2 seasons. They're 30-21, 13-11. They got Charlotte in Charlotte for their final AAC series of the year, and of course they'll be in Clearwater next week. And Jeff, I want to get to this because I think it's pertinent, and you're a guy that knows horse racing very, very well. Churchill Downs is threatening to pull out of Louisiana and close the fairgrounds, not have the track meet, the meet next year, the 2025-2026 meet, because they were allowed to have these HHR machines, the historic horse racing machines, which get payouts of about $100,000. They did it through the legislature, in which they approved it, but again, it was knocked down by the Louisiana Supreme Court in March, saying that any new gaming or gambling that is introduced into the state has to be approved by the citizens of that particular parish. They're claiming they lost 46% of their annual revenue, and they went out. The legislature's trying to find a way to be able to augment that revenue with maybe, again, expanding video poker at truck stops and also at restaurants and bars. Do you think it's realistic that Churchill will pull out and we won't have a meet next year?
No, I think they'll come to some sort of agreement that gets racing out of the uncertainty right now. I think this is clearly a standoff, though, between the state of Louisiana and Churchill Downs Incorporated, which is the owner of Fairgrounds. But we're talking about the third oldest track in America. They've been racing there for
1893.
Yeah, basically 150 years. And it's a significant industry. I mean, there's a lot of people work at these tracks. I think it's basically them sending a warning shot across the bow. Hey, we need attention on this. I know some CDI people came down here to try and meet with Governor Landry to get it on his front burner, and they didn't get the resolution that they were seeking. So I think this is more than anything else, just, hey, let's get attention on this because it is a serious matter, and it very much is. But Churchill has not built up a lot of political goodwill with the state of Louisiana. And so I think there's a little of that going on here too from the state of saying, look, you all have not invested very much in the fairgrounds. You're making money down here at the fairgrounds, but we're not seeing you sink money back in. So I think there's a little bit of sparring going on between the sides, but I do not think it will get to the point where we don't have racing this year.
I got about 2 minutes left. I want to ask you one question about LSU baseball. Again, looks like they're going to be a top 8 seed. Do you like their chance of getting to Omaha?
Yeah, I do like their chance to get into Omaha. I think that they had swoons like we've seen them have in the past, including the year they won the national championship. But LSU has a way of really pulling together at the end. This weekend's an interesting series because who's the coach of South Carolina?
Paul Mary, yeah.
So it'll be a fun ending of the regular season, and then and then we'll see how they do in the SEC tournament. But that's usually where they come alive. Right.
You like what LSU and Tulane have done in the portal going into the football season?
Yeah, I do. I think Tulane might be taking a step back this year, but strategically doing that to go further. I mean, look, that was a double whammy losing Darian Mensah and Mekhi Hughes. I mean, I'm seeing lists right now with Mekhi Hughes as the second best running back in America. Yeah. We all knew that here. I wondered if he would have stayed at Tulane, if he'd still be ranked number 2, which we all know he's certainly that talented.
How about you? Do you like what both teams have done in the offseason?
Well, I think LSU has obviously been way more aggressive than the past, and they needed to be, and so it should help. It looks like Brian Kelly's finally adjusting to the new reality after 30 years of doing it a different way. Right. And so, but Tulane, I agree with Jeff. I think they had some big setbacks that will be difficult to overcome in 1 year. But they're very well run over there right now under John Sumrall, and so I think they should still be competitive and maybe really good in 2 seasons from now.
Pretty amazing for him having to turn this roster over twice. I mean, almost half the roster in 2 years. And you wonder again for a guy like Sumrall, who again is an ascending coach, if he's going to continue to be able to want to do that at Tulane or maybe go somewhere where there's a little bit more stability.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this about LSU. I mean, talking to some people down there in the last few days. They think their defense is going to be significantly better than it was a year ago.
That's important. Well, they've definitely invested in it, so we'll have to see. But I mean, all signs are pointing to the LSU, I think, having more depth and having more prominent players across the board.
Beautiful. Hey, where can folks pick up the paperback?
Just any local bookstore, definitely online. You can get it, and we'll be having a signing coming up. So just follow my social media platforms. We'll get that out there. We just got to get Steve out in the store. Yeah. Get him out to get a chance to meet everybody. Yeah.
Brett Martel, Jeff Duncan, thanks so much for joining us on this week's edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Appreciate you guys joining us.
Good to be here.
All right, thanks so much for tuning in. So many ways to catch our program now. There's a QR code on your screen that will take you to the WLAE-TV YouTube channel and also my website, ericasher.com. Remember, between Pelican Sports Television, WLAE-TV, WLAE-TV2, so many ways to catch our program. I say it every week. Set your DVR. You'll never miss the program. You catch me on the radio, 106.7 The Ticket. You can listen live at ericasher.com, but we also have our own app, 106.7 The Ticket app, iHeartRadio app, TuneIn Radio app, or other digital platforms. You can catch the show as well. And of course, as always, we appreciate you checking out both this show and the radio show. Again, it's 4 to 6 weekdays, 106.7 The Ticket. Want to thank the underwriters who make the show possible. Please continue to support our underwriters. They're the reason why we have this program. We would appreciate, again, your support of our underwriters. And we have to thank, again, our folks here at WLAE-TV who produce our program each and every week. They do a fantastic job doing it. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Alex Chacon, Maggie Ellis, and also the best director on the planet, William Hill. For Brett Martel and Jeff Duncan, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for watching.
Everyone in New Orleans who is old enough recognizes his name. Al Scramuzza changed the Crescent City's culinary identity forever. But he was more than just the crawfish king. This is the untold story of a man, a legend, who had it all and found his true calling when he lost it all.
Watch a special airing of Al Scramuzza, the Crawfish King, Sunday, May 18th at 7 p.m. or anytime on our YouTube channel, only on WLAE.
It's Kyle's last spin on his turntable.
Yeah.
And the first day of Kira's new career in IT. When you donate to Goodwill, you help provide skills training and career placement. And the things you loved start a new life too.
We're local and educational. You're watching WLAE-TV, celebrating 40 years of New Orleans